Hello all, this is Neil from Edureka and welcome to this interesting session on the various new features that are introduced with Java 9. Now without wasting any time, let's move forward and look at today's agenda to get a good idea of what we'll be discussing as part of this session. Now talking about the most important features of Java 9, we'll be starting with the REPL JShell, which is a very interesting concept that has been added to Java 9. And then we'll be going on to look at the collection factory methods as well as the HTTP2 client feature that has been added as well. Apart from this, we'll also be looking into the Jigsaw project, which helps us achieve modularity in Java 9, and we'll also look at some of the other mentionable features that have been included here. So I hope you guys are excited for this. So let's move forward to the first topic of the session, which is the REPL JShell. Now, for those of you who are familiar with other programming languages like Groovy, Scala, or even Ruby and Python, you must have heard about REPL from before. It basically translates to read, eval, print loop. Now with Java 9 as well, the REPL tool has been introduced and it makes it quite easy for you to try out different language features as well. Now, what it basically does is that it helps you write simple code and test them out. So if you've worked with Scala, then to just print hello world, all you need to write is println and then hello world. But in Java, when you come down, you need to define a class, you need to define a specifier, then go into the function, use the system.out.println command, and then only it gets executed. But with the JShell scripting, you can actually write this in a single go and thereby making it quite easy and effective in order to check whether the statements are valid or not as well. Now, to help you understand this, let's look at a demo. Now, in order to execute the command and use it on the JShell, let me start by launching my command prompt. Okay, now one thing that you need to see is that before you go on and work with the JShell, you need to see which version of Java you're using. So let's use Java-version. This will actually tell me which is my present version. So I am at Java version 9.04. So only versions above 9 will actually have the JShell feature as well. Now, in order to get into the JShell, it's quite simple. You just need to use the command JShell and you're inside the JShell as well. So when you're going inside the JShell, you are also prompted with the current version of Java that you're using as well. Now, at any point, if you do need any help or you want some understanding more about the JShell, then always you just have to use the command /help. Okay, so this will be really helpful and I'll give you all the necessary commands and overall idea as well with respect to the various options present here. Now, let's actually understand this with an example. Let's say I want to print hello world here. So I'll use system.out.println. Okay, so this is a standard command that we use in Java to print. Okay, I will close this, put a semicolon at the end, and voila, you have hello world being printed here. That's how easy JShell has made my life in order to test certain conditions or certain parameters as well with respect to the Java program. Okay, now let's also try to understand something slightly more complicated. Let me try to help you understand how we can use the JShell to declare a variable, and then we'll be looking at a method as well. So let me start with int a is equal to 9, and okay, as you can see, a has been initialized to 9. Now let's move forward and let me show you something interesting here. Now, you might be wondering, okay, do I need to even initialize variables? Not really. You can even directly write the command. Let's say I want to add two numbers. I say 9 plus 2. And you can see here $3 is a new variable that is being created. And to that, the value, that is the answer 11, has been assigned as well. So this is how it works out. So now actually, let's see what happens is, let's take an example of a method and let's see how it works. But before that, let's say at one point, if you want to have an idea of all the commands that you have executed, just use /list and it'll give you the list of commands that you have executed as well. So you can see here, I started off with a print statement. Then I went to initialize a variable that was a, and I've given it the value of 9. And then I've just added two numbers as well. So going on forward, let's actually look at something more interesting. Now, before we go on to look at how to create a method, one thing that you need to understand is that the numbers that are present to the left, these are actually identifiers for the commands that we have executed. That's why when we had given the addition operation, the left hand side we had used $3. That was the third identifier used to store the value 11. Okay, now let's just write a simple program that will print hello world, but I'm going to write it inside a function. So what I'll do is I'll make it a void function. So let's start with void, and I'll call it output message. No parameters. I'm going to open the curly braces, and I'm already inside my function. So here I'm just going to use system.out.println. Okay, now inside that, let me define hello world. All right, and if I hit enter here and I close this function, then you can see here it is already telling me that it is missing parenthesis. So this is something that's quite important. Okay, so let's say no matter what you do, the syntax needs to be followed. So let me just restart this, add in a colon, and I close this. Now what you can see here is there's a method that's been created called output message. So this is what I had defined earlier as well. So at any point, let's say if I want to call this method, then I just need to type the name of that method. And if I call this, yes, hello world is being printed as well. So apart from the standard definition, I can also write methods here which are quite useful and helpful for me as well. But let's say I want to go back to the list option, okay, to see the list of commands that I have executed. Now as you can see here, the entire code, that is the entire function that I had defined, is being referred with respect to a single identifier. It's not considering each of the lines separately as such as in the earlier case as well. So this is something that's quite interesting with the JShell as such. Now again, what you need to understand is that the JShell tool is actually not meant to create projects, but the main intent of this is actually to get a prompt response. That is, you want to check if the logic of the code or the output of a particular logic is correct or not. That's the exact situation when you can use JShell as well. Now, what you might be wondering is, can we actually edit any of the code that we have written earlier as well? Definitely that is possible, and let's see how that can be done. Again, what you can see is that you can use the list method to get the identifier for that method. Once you've understood this, then just use the following command /edit and then just specify the identifier. So in this case, it's 4. Now, what you're seeing here is a JShell editor pad, and this is something that's coming out by default. So let's say instead of hello world, I'm just going to say, hey everyone, welcome to Edureka. Okay, once I'm done with this, I can accept it and then I can exit this. Okay, now what we want to see is that, let me go back to my list, and if you see here, it has been updated as well. So this is one way through which you can modify or update any existing methods which are part of the JShell as well. Now again, let's just validate this function as well, that whether the change has happened or not. So for that, I'm just going to call the same function again, and here you can see the output also has been updated as well. So this is something that is quite interesting and useful as well. Now the last step always is leaving out the JShell. So you might be wondering, how do we do that? So just use /exit and it brings me out of JShell as well. And it's nice enough to say a goodbye as well. So that was a demo on the REPL JShell as well. Now again, what you need to understand is the entire process that is present here with respect to the REPL JShell is that you're always in a complete loop. When you first take an input and read it, then you evaluate whether this is correct, you print it, and this loop keeps running around and around. Okay, so this is what REPL refers to, and this is something that's quite newly introduced in Java 9 as well. Moving on to the next interesting factor about Java 9 is the collection factory method. Now, talking about the collection factory methods, Java 9 has added new static factory methods on lists, set, and map interfaces as well. Now, this actually makes it quite easier for you to create immutable instances of these collections as well. Now, if you look here, if the function that is list.of function that you're using can actually be used to create immutable list, and same with in case of sets and maps. That is, you can use set.of for creating immutable sets and map.of for creating immutable maps as well. Now, what I'll be doing is I'll just show you a demo that will help you understand the difference between the newly introduced collection factory methods and the existing methods as well. So let's just take a simple example. Let's say I'm going to create a set as well. Now let's go back to our JShell because I really like the JShell feature, and let's look at the example as well. So let me just go back to the JShell. Now, before I actually start with the methods, let me just give you a simple idea of what sets are, for those of you who are not familiar with it. Now, set is basically nothing more than an interface which extends the collection class and which is an unordered collection of objects in which duplicate values cannot actually be stored. Okay, so now let's actually look at how it was implemented in the earlier versions and how it can be implemented now. So let me begin by creating the code which was used in earlier version. So it's set, and then you specify the type, let's say string. I use set is equal to collections dot unmodifiable set. And let's say I'm going to define a new hash set, and I'll define the type to be of string. And let me open curly braces for this as well. So once this is done, to this let me just add a few items. Let's say I like fruits, so let me add apples first. And do not forget to add the semicolon. Let's say add mangoes. And let's say I'll add orange. And let me just close all this and put a semicolon at the end. Okay, so you can see now a set has been created which contains apples, mangoes, and oranges, but in a reverse order. Okay, now this is how traditionally it was defined, but now let's see how you can conveniently create this in Java 9 as such. So here just use set and then specify the type, which is string, use the name of the set equal to, and then use the function set.of, and then specify the elements here inside curved braces. So let's say I'm going to call this, so let me just change the name of this set. I'll just call this set1. Okay, and I'm going to go back and here let me just rename this and let me add the elements. Let's say apples. Okay, so let's say if you want to add multiple variables, then make sure you're separating them with a comma. Again, let's give banana and orange, add a semicolon, and then we are done. So now you can see I've actually defined a set in just a single line instead of 5 different lines that was actually being used earlier. So this is what Set.of function, which is being introduced in the latest collection factory methods, helps us to do. Now same, let's take the case of, let's say, list. Now list is basically an interface which is a sub interface of the collection class, and it contains methods to insert or delete element on index basis as such. Okay, now let's see how list can be implemented compared to the earlier version as such. Now let me first show you the command for creating lists in the earlier version. Now let's actually understand how this works out. Let me just show you the command for list. I've already typed it out. Okay, now what you need to see here is this was how lists were written in the earlier days. So once you execute this, it creates a list which contains the element apple, mango, and orange as well. Now newer, it's slightly easier in terms of writing. Now it does not depend on the array class, so it's just list, and again it's type of list that you're creating. So in this case it's going to be string, and the name of the list, so I'll just call it list1, and this is equal to list of, this is the function that has been introduced recently, and then the values that are going to be included here. So apples, mango, and last but not least orange. And you can see a new list has been created. So again, you can use either of the conventions that are present here, but it's up to you on how you want to follow. Now similarly, if you want, I will show you for maps as well, but before that, maps can basically are a key value pair system. Okay, so this is something that's quite interesting that makes it stand out with respect to all other data types that are present here. Now each key and value pair are known as an entity, and this map contains only unique pairs of keys which are actually helpful while searching or updating or even deleting an element based on the key of value. Okay, so let me just show you the command which was used earlier for creating maps. So this is how actually maps were defined using the older syntax, wherein you had to first specify the keyword map, then you had to specify the type of key, type of value, that is string in this case, then use the name of the map, then the parent class, which is collection.unmodifiable map, and then specify what kind of map. So this is a hash map wherein the key value pair would be of string type itself, and I'm specifying two values here, which is key1 value 1, key 2 value 2. Okay, so let me just execute this, and you can see a new map has been created. Now the same thing can actually be reduced while you're using the map of class. So in that case, you're just going to write map, specify the type of key and value. So first is key, so let's say string itself, comma, the type of value, then name of the new map variable. So I'm just going to give map1. Now I'm basically using this to distinguish both variables, so I'm just going to say map of function, and here I'm going to give the key value systems. Now what you need to understand is that every odd parameter would be considered as a key, and every even parameter would be considered as a value as well. So just remember that when you're passing this. So let's say I'm going to give here key 3 separated with comma, let's say value 3, key 4, and value 4. So now you can see what had actually taken me 5 different lines for executing is now again getting sorted in a single line. So again, these are quite interesting and easier fact. Now Now, what this does on a long run is that it basically helps you reduce the overall number of codes that are involved while you're writing a program. Now, we all know that today, while you're writing a Java program, it's not something that you would write in maybe 100 or 200 lines. But when you have redundancy, when you need to write long lines of code, such small effective code handling skills would be really helpful as well. Now, this is something that Java has introduced with respect to Java 9, and it's quite interesting as well as effective as such. So moving forward, we've discussed about these commands as well, how they have helped us. So let me go on to the next key feature, which is HTTP2 client feature. Okay, so let's talk about this next. Now, the first thing that I would like to tell you about the HTTP2 client feature is that this feature is actually expected to change either in the subsequent releases or even maybe removed completely. But what you need to understand is that earlier developers used to often resort to using third-party libraries like Apache's HTTPS, Jersey, and so on. In addition to this, Java's HTTP API predates to HTTP 1.1 version. Java's HTTP API predates to HTTP 1.1 specifically and is synchronous and hard to maintain as well. Now, these limitations called for a need to add a new API as well. So why HTTP2? What are its benefits? Let's look at them one by one. A simple and concise API to deal with most of the HTTP requests. Now, this in turn makes it quite easy and useful in while you're managing the HTTP request within your application as well. And it also supports the HTTP2 version specifications as well. So this in turn is helping it reach out better in terms of both performance as well as security as well. Now again, apart from this, there are a lot more enhancements that have been added to it, but that we'll be seeing later on. But again, this is something that's quite interesting, and I'm not sure how long it will be there for, but definitely you can make use of it right away as such. So now let's actually look at another key feature, which is Project Jigsaw. But before we talk about that, let's try to address why Jigsaw project. What are exactly are its benefits to Java 9? Now, Project Jigsaw has been in the buzz for a while now because it is going to introduce something that's new in the Java environment. What it basically is trying to help you achieve is that it's trying to help you achieve the concept of modularity. That is, it's going to support for creations of module in Java 9 and apply the same to your Java development kit as well. This actually is the modularization of the Java development kit. So let's actually look at some of these key features to help us understand what led to this feature being added with Java 9 as well. Now, the first thing that I would like to bring is a strong encapsulation. Now, what do I mean by that is that in this module, you can only access those parts of the module which have been made available for use. So let's take an example wherein we have a public class as part of the package. This package but will not stay public unless and until the package is explicitly exported into the module info file. Now, this in turn makes it quite strong in terms of encapsulation as well. Now, the next key feature would be in terms of dependency, that is, you have clear dependencies as well. Modules often need other modules to fulfill their obligations. As we all know, this is something that's quite true and that is something quite necessary as well. Now, in order to fulfill these obligations, any such dependencies must actually be part of the module definition for the module to be self-contained. Now, these dependencies give rise to a modular graph. Nodes represent modules and the edge represents dependencies between modules, which is important for both understanding the applications running in it with all the necessary modules as well. Now, then comes the reliability factor. As applications are more reliable by eliminating the runtime errors. Now, let's take an example wherein you're running an application and during runtime there are some missing classes. Again, you find the error which is class not found exception. So all these can be actually eliminated by making use of modularity. So this is what Project Jigsaw actually brings in and helps you achieve as well. Now, in order to give you a little more understanding of the Jigsaw project, let me just help you understand how the Jigsaw project has enabled JDK enhancement proposal. Okay, now you first start off with JEP 200, which actually enables you to achieve modular JDK. This in turn also will help you with the JEP 201 to achieve modular source code as well. Then JEP 220 will help you achieve modular runtime images, and 260 will help you encapsulate most of your internal APIs as well. 261 is around the same line, you'll be able to achieve a modular system, and finally with 282 JLink, the Java linker will also be part of the modularity as well. So this is just a rough idea of how Jigsaw project is helping the JDK enhancement protocols as well. Now let's actually look at some of the other Java 9 features. Now the first thing that we'll be discussing is the multi-release jar system. Now this is actually a feature which is quite interesting and good news for people who maintain libraries as well. Now when a new version of Java comes out, one of the biggest challenges is that it takes years for all your libraries to switch to the newer version as such. Now this in turn actually means that the libraries must be backward compatible with the oldest version of Java which you want to support. Now, ideally, given present that Java 9 is released, maybe you would want to stick to Java 5. I would be more favorable to 6 or 7 as such. But what you need to do is that you need to understand that I always need to be backward compatible. Now, this actually means that you won't get the new features of Java 9 in your library for a very long time. But through the multi-release jar function, it helps you create alternative versions of classes that can be used while running the library on a specific Java version. Now let's actually look at the directory structure here. Now if you look at the Java multi-release jar feature, you have the meta information under which the version also has been specified. And under that you can find the multi-release class and the helper class as well. Now what this program basically means is that we've actually used the multi-release jar which can be used on Java 9. Now instead of the top level multi-release.helper class, we can actually go for this which is present under the meta section as well. So this in turn ensures that the features of Java 9 are possible with this program as well. Now, this basically is a Java 9 specific version, but at the same time, it also ensures that while using this jar on any version which is earlier than 9, it would still work since older versions of Java will only see the top layer of hierarchy as well. So this in turn ensures that there is backward compatibility at the same time providing you with the features of Java 9 as well. Now, the last feature of Java I will be discussing is the Javadoc. Now, again, Javadoc is always the parent or the main source for any kind of information that you're looking for. Because if you ask me, if someone wants to study Java, this is the correct place that they need to do. Because this is where every information is present, and there's been a major improvement with respect to the Java docs. And this is something that's quite interesting and helpful for you as well. So definitely do look in. They've had a major upgrade with respect to the Java doc itself. Now they have included searches in the right for the API documentation itself. Now as a bonus, you can also believe that Javadoc output is now actually HTML5 compliant as well. So this is something that's quite helpful. So again, any information that you want with respect to the newer features or newer updates as well, this is the correct place to go to. Now with this, we actually come down to the end of our session. And before we end up with the session, I'd like to just finish with on a lighter note wherein I'll just summarize what we have discussed about Java 9 as well. Now, we started off with JShell and how it had helped us with achieving REPL feature, and then we moved on to collection factories and how it made it easier for you to define immutable sets, lists, and maps as well. After that, we talked about the Jigsaw modularity feature which has been introduced with Java 9 and how this can actually help us achieve a modular JDK environment as well. And following that, we talked about the multi-release style and how it also ensures that the newer features provided in Java 9 is present. At the same time, it's also backward compatible, and we just had a look with respect to the update in Java docs as well. So this brings us to the end of this session. I hope this was an informative session. Now with this, thank you and goodbye.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!